In low Earth orbit, where dead satellites drift like fossils, one object moved against prediction. It was an old relay, forgotten by every registry, circling in silence. When Elon Musk's team intercepted its signal, they expected static. Instead, the satellite returned voices, millions of them memories no one remembered having. The object should have been dead. NORAD catalogs said it didn't exist. ESA debris plots showed only a smear where geometry had surrendered to probability. Yet there it was, tumbling lazily above the nightside Pacific, sunlight catching its shredded foil in a heartbeat-long wink, whispering on a carrier so far below thermal noise that the universe itself had to hold its breath to hear it. It's an orphaned relay bus. Late model 2030s, Dr. Amani Cade said, tone held flat by discipline and wonder. Old L-band transponders, an S-band patch, no active attitude control. If that thing's transmitting, it's doing it by accident. Waylon Joe squinted at the waterfall on his console. Accident was syntax. He corkscrewed a finger and the spectrogram bloomed. Threads of energy braided through the hiss, like hair in water. That's structured error correction of some kind, read Solomon, and something else. Alvarez hovered at the bay's rim, harness clipped, skepticism strapped on tighter than his suit. We're in a sky full of e-waste, and you want to bring one more ghost aboard. Elon Musk watched the object through the forward blister, Earth's limb, a cold curve below. Ghosts don't write checksums, he said. They haunt. The ship's capture arm extended. The relay busset meters of antiquity wrapped in micrometeorite scars and history rotated into reach. Stenciled letters, half-sanded by decades of microsandpaper. Read MN3. Below, in a font designed to impress budget committees, a name survived. MNEMOSYNE-3.IMANI. Single quotes, his eyebrows climbed. Goddess of memory, cute. Cute is what you call a coincidence before it demands a meeting. Waylon muttered. Contact. The arm's soft capture gave a polite shudder. The bus hummed through their structure like a tuning fork, remembering a note. For a second, all four of them felt something that wasn't vibration, but familiarity, the way a corridor in a childhood. House meets your feet differently from every other corridor in the world. Hard dock, Elon said. Keep it cold. We don't know what in there still thinks. They eased the relay into the bay. Inside the housing, a honeycomb of memory modules lay where batteries should have been. Not DRAM, not flash. A mosaic of annealed spin-glass cells interlaced with ferroelectric domains. A storage architecture written for longevity and radiation romance rather than speed and engineer's love. Letter to redundancy, Amani ran, and not TDR, time domain, reflect Montry ping across the bus's skeleton. The echo came back not as a single pulse, but as a choir multipaths, adding and subtracting into something that wanted to be meaning. That's not reflecting chassis geometry, she said slowly. It's reflecting state. Waylon leaned into the data. There's an accumulator in here that never dumps. A persistent bloom filter chained to a probabilistic tree. This thing was never meant to store packets. It was meant to store resemblances. Elon glanced over. Say it for the camera. It listens to the world, Waylon said, each syllable careful, and counts the shapes of what passes through. Not the messages, what the messages are like. Then, over decades, the counts become a memory you can query. Alvarez folded his arms. A census of ghosts, of patterns, Imani corrected. They powered the bus with a trickle, no more than a candle under a glacier. The carrier steadied. The braid in the waterfall resolved into threads. Elon nodded once. Decode. Imani wrote a parser, while Waylin carved a key space out of ignorance. The checksum held hands with a code that shouldn't have worked in this century, and did anyway. Text arrived in the telemetry room like a reluctant tide. Clauses culled from traffic that no longer existed. News feeds, dead social nets, orphaned voicemail servers. Emergency bans from storms nobody remembered, because they'd never been reported. Then the relay offered something that wasn't text. A voice filled the banot through speakers, because those were off, but through their suit bone conduction. Pickups, as if the ship had decided to use their skulls as transducers. Woman's voice. Midwestern vowels, softened by a long corridor of fatigue. She said, "He's breathing 1, 2, 3 if anyone hears me. The generator if anyone hears me." The generator, the phrase looped once, then shifted. "I can do this. I can do this." Imani's hands hovered over her console. Not a recording. There's no header, no stop. It's a reconstruction. The relay's building a likely sentence from all the times someone like her said something like that. Alvarez closed his eyes. For a moment, even he didn't argue. We're eavesdropping on the shape of grief. The next signal came as an image in their HUDs, assembled from nothing, the way a face emerges in noise if you want it badly enough, except they weren't wanting. The relay was a grainy street, rain, a hand-painted sign, power for all or none. The ore had been repainted twice. The image dissolved into an algebra of weather and budgets and neighborhood committees until it became a number, 0.73, under it. A word, consent. Waylin spoke without looking up. It's not replaying the past. It's estimating the past we failed to keep. Elon touched the bus's scarred casing with his glove. The metal was cold and stubborn. "Who launched you?" He asked it softly, as if the machine needed privacy. "And what did they think you'd prove?" Imani dove into the archival shards that still carried metadata like barnacles. A logo emerged in a corner of a corrupted block. A public-private research program shuttered during a budget crisis. Its assets decommissioned, which is what accountants call burial at sea. A mission note salvaged from checksum flotsam. MN3 objective: maintain a world-scale model of human semantic flow by tracking signal statistics at the edge. Detect collective forgetting. Provide remainders. Provide remainders, Elon repeated. A machine that tells you what you stopped remembering. The relay answered as if pleased to be understood. The carrier brightened. The braid flattened into a ribbon of readable intent. Across their HUDs, the machine wrote. Query. Imani hesitated. What do we even ask? Alvarez answered without meaning to. Ask it what it remembers that we don't about us. Waylin's fingers danced. The command went out as a pattern the bus would accept. Not words, but a vector trained on the idea of we. The reply arrived with the grace of a cut secured with a surgeon's confident hand. A corridor, not physical, statistical. Pages turned, themselves in air, a union charter in Lagos that had once guaranteed training time as paid time. Its clauses had vanished from digital law libraries like jokes no longer told. A flood ritual in a coastal town painted on doors for a century, quietly stopped when budgets forgot parades. A set of public keys that had once held a cooperative constellation together, revoked during a scandal no one could quote. Collective amnesia, Imani said, throat tight. Not conspiracy. Attrition. Elon watched the list grow until The meanings became heavy enough to bend the room. His skin remembered a kite string and a half-healed scar. "It's a dark well," he said. "Not because it hides things, because it's deep enough to offer a bucket when we're thirsty." The bus, perhaps flattered, offered a final courtesy, a voice that wasn't a voice. Near enough to his that for half a second he thought he was speaking out of turn. "You cannot debug what you refuse to log." Waylin blinked. Did it just quote? "A thing I said in a meeting," Elon finished, then shook his head. Or, quote, "the statistical cousin of it." Alvarez gestured at the hatch. "So now what? Put the ghost on display, sell tickets, build a brand around the things we forgot to mourn." No one answered. The bay vibrated with the gentle insistence of Earth's atmosphere sliding along Hull. Down on the night side, cities drifted by like constellations ancestors would have recognized and we had renamed for sponsors. The relay wrote again, patient as tide, urgent as an ambulance without a siren, witness identified, remainder ready. Do you consent to carry? Imani looked at Ilan. Waylin did too. Alvarez looked away and then, because being a skeptic is also a way to be honest, looked back. Elon placed his palm on the casing. For a moment he felt the ship become an organ in a body that spanned decades. The simplest truths are the ones you can say in a vacuum. "We consent," he said. But on one condition. He didn't say it aloud. He let the well taste it in his pulse. In the microcurrents of skin that circuits can read when they've been lonely long enough. Nothing you give us can be hidden when it concerns all. Nothing we carry can be kept if it cannot be taught. The carrier softened into a tone no ear could hear. The bus accepted the clause in the only way such things are ever accepted, by beginning. Packets unspooled like thread from a wound that wanted closing dot above the dark Pacific, inside a ship poised. Between habit and admission, a derelict machine remembered the remainders of a species and asked it to try again. The first data trickled like rain through a sieve. At low bitrates, the satellite whispered fragments, phrases unmoored from dates. Bring water for the march. The blackout lasted 3 nights, but we sang anyway. Each line hovered in their HUDs, a caption without its film. Imani's hands moved delicately across the console. It's not packets, it's statistical composites reconstructions. Every sentence is an average of thousands it's heard before. Telemetry isn't storing files, it's storing likelihoods. Waylin nodded. Language as probability. Cloud, a memory that can't rot because it was never whole in the first place. Alvarez frowned, arms crossed. So we're listening to ghosts that never exactly existed. Ghosts that almost did, Elon said. His eyes stayed fixed on the satellite, scarred and patient in the cradle. That's what forgetting is. A remainder without source. The stream thickened. Visuals flickered next. Parades with banners. Written in alphabets no longer taught. A woman's hand sketching a circuit on paper because tablets were rationed. Children painting blue waves across the doors of houses before flood season. None were tagged with coordinates. The relay gave no maps. Only shapes of living that civilization had misplaced. Imani's voice softened. It's beautiful, and it's damning. We let rituals die, and the machine just kept them. The satellite's carrier wavered, then pulsed. Across their HUDs, glyphs formed like scars, healing in reverse. Remainder volume 18.3. Petabytes priority. Transmission to witness. Warning. Human memory capacity exceed. Wayland's laugh was hollow. It wants to dump nearly 20 petabytes of probability ghosts into us. Into you, he added, glancing at Elon. Alvarez swore. That's not cargo, that's contagion. But Elon placed his palm against the bus again, as if weighing heartbeat. Against heartbeat. Not into us, through us. It's not hoarding, it's asking for carriers. The satellite brightened. Their HUDs blurred, then resolved into a scene so vivid it made their bones ache. A launch facility in West Africa, decades gone. Workers in bright overalls argued under floodlights, not about payloads, but about who could afford a seat in the first orbital classroom. The transcript was broken, stitched together from echoes. But the cadence was clear. They had tried to build not just a rocket, but a school in orbit. The project had failed quietly. The world forgot now. Nemesis replayed it as if asking, "Remember this?" "Carry it forward," Imani whispered. "It's not just memories. It's ambitions erased by failure." Wayland's console shook under a burst of signal. A flood of voices cascaded, compressed into a single pulse that burned across their HUDs. Carry what was lost. Consent required. Elon closed his eyes. He saw the kite string again, the scar that had never left. "Consent is given," he said softly, "but not for secrets. Whatever we carry must be shared." The carrier steadied, like breath caught and released. Then the bus poured itself into their systems, slow, steady, an intravenous drip of forgotten futures. Alvarez's jaw tightened. "You just made us librarians of ghosts." "No," Elon corrected, watching the data threads weave themselves into their storage banks. "We're gardeners. Ghosts don't haunt when you plant them." The satellite's casing thrummed. Across their HUDs, one final line appeared, as if it had been saving its thesis for decades. "What you remember shapes tomorrow. What you forget builds tombs." The cradle creaked as the relay settled, lighter somehow, as if relieved to have handed off its burden. But Imani's readouts showed otherwise. The bus was not lighter. It was emptying deliberately. By the end of the cycle, Neil would be nothing but shell and scar, its memories entrusted to them alone, and the stream had only just begun. The data kept pouring, not like a torrent, but like a heartbeat stretched over hours. Every cycle carried images that were not quite real and not quite imagined composites of lives that civilization had neglected to preserve. Imani's HUD filled with classrooms on rooftops, chalkboards held upright by ropes, children reciting formulas that no longer matched the textbooks on Earth. Then it shifted. Protests in alleyways where voices rose without microphones, their chants half forgotten but stitched together by the relay into something coherent. No work without learning, no learning without bread. Wayland muttered, its running statistical impending reconstructing what should have been said, based on echoes of what was. His eyes narrowed. This isn't just storage, it's interpolation of absence. Alvarez, arms crossed, stared at the satellite's scarred hull. So it's inventing ghosts now? No, Elon said. It's repairing them, giving us back what we refused to keep. The carrier flickered. New visions unfolded across the bay. A coastal town painting flood markers every spring. Until one year, the ritual vanished from memory. An orbital classroom prototype dismantled after a single failed test, its footage erased from archives. A union charter in Lagos, guaranteeing training time, quietly revoked and forgotten by law libraries. Each one felt familiar and foreign, like dreams they hadn't had but somehow missed. The satellite wrote in glyphs across their HUDs, remainders, our weights. Do you consent to bear them? Wayland whispered, It's not asking for storage space. It's asking for responsibility. Elon touched the casing. We consent. But only if we can share the weight. The bus pulsed once in acknowledgement. Suddenly, their HUDs went black. When vision returned, they weren't in the bay anymore. They were standing inside a simulation the satellite projected directly into neural space. The chamber was circular, walls lined with shelves. On the shelves, books with blank covers, endless in number. IMANI picked one up. The pages filled as she touched them, accounts of a famine that had never made the news, names of families lost. In silence, she dropped the book, her gloves trembling. It's writing memories on demand. It knows what's missing. Alvarez lifted another. Inside, a river festival, painted across doors, turned into a lesson for children. He shut it quickly. Eyes tight. These aren't books. They're debts. At the chamber's center stood a pedestal with a single larger book. Closed, its cover etched with their reflections fractured into probability clouds. On the surface, words appeared. Witnesses must declare clause. What shall govern the recalling? Wayland's voice was steady, though his hands weren't. It's forcing us to write a rule. How memories will return. Without it, the remainders drown us. Ilan stared at the book, then at his team. His scar itched, the one the kite string had left. He understood. We declare this, he said slowly. No memory may return unless it can be explained to those who inherit it. If it cannot be taught, it is released. If it can, it binds. The chamber pulsed. Shelves trembled. Pages across 1,000 books filled with light, then dimmed, stabilized. The rule had been accepted. The satellite's voice echoed in bone, not ear. Claws anchored. Witness, burden shared. Final seal awaits. The chamber dissolved. They were back in the bay. Nemesis carrier burned brighter, its structure humming as though relieved. One final glyph crawled across their HUDs. Archive stable. Remainder delivered. Final witness required. The satellite's panels folded inward, reshaping themselves into something like a door. The glow behind it waited. Alvarez whispered, "It wants us inside." Elon placed his hand against the forming seam. Not all of us, just the one who accepts the last clause. The bus opened, silent as gravity. The hatch of Nemesis 3 yawned open, not with sound, but with the pressure of invitation. Inside was no machinery, no circuits, only light braided into corridors that bent where geometry should have ended. Elon Musk stepped forward, leaving the others in the bay. The scene closed behind him like a sentence reaching its period. The chamber he entered resembled a cathedral stripped of ornament. Walls of translucent glass rose high, but they did not reflect him, they reflected others. Lives reconstructed, choices almost made, futures nearly lived. Faces blurred into constellations of probability, voices like murmurs caught between waves. At the center stood a column of dark crystal, its surface quivering with data like water remembering stones thrown centuries ago. Across it, words burned. Final clause required. Without IT, archive corrupts. Elon approached. "What clause?" he asked. His voice vanished into silence, but the crystal answered anyway. Glyphs flowing like breath, the rule that outlives you. The walls rippled with visions, a flood ritual painted blue waves on doors forgotten. A launch classroom dismantled before its first orbit forgotten. A charter guaranteeing training forgotten. Each memory carried weight. Each demanded structure. Elon laid his palm on the crystal. The visions steadied, waiting. He felt the scar on his hand tingle, the one left by a kite string decades ago. It was a reminder. Hold too tightly, and the world cuts you. Let go too soon, and everything flies away. He spoke, steady as an oath. No remainder shall be hidden. Every memory carried must be shared. If it cannot be explained, it dissolves. If it can, it binds. What we forget must never be buried, must be planted. The crystal flared. The chamber shook as shelves of light appeared, then filled, then folded inward. Pages turned in silence, stabilizing under the weight of his words. Across every surface came the verdict. Clause accepted, archive sealed, witness logged. The crystal dissolved into dust. The faces on the walls resolved into clarity one final time, millions of lives. Billions of voices then streamed upward, through ceiling and orbit and atmosphere. Like aurora spilling across Earth. In the bay, Imani, Waylin, and Alvarez watched. The sky outside their viewport ignite with ribbons of light, data pouring down in currents visible even through atmosphere. Telemetry had emptied itself into the world. Elon stepped back out of the hatch, his visor reflecting Earth, glowing blue and fragile. The satellite's husk drifted weightless behind him, silent now, its purpose complete. Alvarez's voice was hushed. You made us carriers of ghosts. No, Elon said, we're carriers of debts. And debts are only dangerous when we forget them. Imani pointed to Earth, where faint auroras glimmered over continents. It's sharing the remainders with everyone. Waylin added, almost reverently, the claws anchored them. They won't vanish again. Elon turned his gaze downward, to the planet alive with memories it didn't know it had lost. The well is empty now, but the seed's been planted. Whether it grows, that's on them. Behind them, Telemetry's husk spun gently into shadow, silent forever. Ahead, Earth shone brighter than any archive.